Come on, y'all.
Hey, and here we go.
Welcome to the Cheer Chronicles podcast with Rosie.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Cheer Chronicles podcast. This is your host, Rosie, cheer mom and cheer coach, and I am beyond excited for this episode. We are bringing in our very first guest, and I hope one of many, many more. We have Kristen Smith on the podcast today, also known as Coach Buckley from Top Gun Southwest Florida. We are just so excited. I know she's excited to be here today as well. I am going to give you guys a little introduction about Coach Buckley, and then we will get started on the episode. Coach Buckley is a wife, and she's a mother of two to her beautiful kids, Blakely and Lincoln. She graduated from FGCU in 2011 and started off her career as a high school math teacher. That's right, you guys. She is a numbers girl. She taught for about 10 years before transitioning into her new role as a gym director of Top Gun Southwest Florida. She has been part of the Top Gun family since 2010 and has been the gym director for the past 3 seasons. Before I started this podcast, I reached out to her and I wanted her input because my kids have been cheering at Top Gun Southwest Florida for the past 6 years. As soon as she heard about the podcast, she was just so excited and said, I would love to be on the podcast, maybe even co-host some episodes with you, which that will be coming in the future. But she was all for it. So, of course, we wanted to bring her on the podcast as our very, very first guest. This episode is lots of fun. There's also video to this episode, which is awesome, kind of, because now you got to look at me. But anyway, it also brings our very first send-off round. So I want to explain this real quick to everyone. Our send-off round is just 5 questions. Our guest doesn't know what questions are going to be asked, and they just have a few seconds to answer them. So it's kind of fun, keeps everyone on their toes, and instead of calling it a lightning round, I am calling it a send-off round because that makes sense for a cheer podcast, right? So without further ado, you guys, enjoy this episode. We had a blast recording it, and here is Coach Buckley from Top Gun Southwest Florida. Okay, so welcome to the Cheer Chronicles podcast. We are here with the famous Coach Buckley from Top Gun Southwest Florida. So we are going to get right into the interview, Coach. So tell us what brought you to Top Gun.
So very exciting. I went to FGCU, and the owner of our location of Southwest Florida, his name is John Bencomo.
Mm-hmm.
He was my cheerleading coach my freshman year of FGCU. I needed to get volunteer hours, and since Top Gun has a nonprofit, I basically worked all their summer camps for volunteer hours, which is kind of how I got my foot in the door. And then right before I graduated, I was helping with evaluations, and they realized they need a few extra coaches. My name got brought up, and then I started coaching that season.
And that was in 2010?
2010, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's awesome. Did he go to University of Kentucky?
Yes.
And cheer there?
So he did University of Kentucky. I believe he also did FIU, but I know he did 2 years at University of Kentucky.
He should have done some cheering at UM.
You can have a conversation with him about that.
Okay. So next question, what are your core values as a coach?
So I think when I was actually full on coaching and not in a position that I was, my biggest, I think, value was to make the kids good. Right. I wanted to see the progression, and I wanted to see, my favorite part was taking a team that wasn't maybe as naturally talented as some of the other ones and progressing them so much that at the end of the season, they're like, oh my gosh, from start to finish, they really see that growth. Mm-hmm. Because as an athlete, I think that's the most important. I think the other thing was just being kind of like a safe place and being a good role model so that, I know it sounds a little, like a guilty pleasure, but like I was making a difference for them, and then hence they were getting great things, but like I was also getting a lot out of it.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. I think as a coach, a lot of the times obviously we're there for the kids.
Yeah.
Even when I've coached myself and I have teams that my kids aren't in it, and I get the greatest value and success from those teams sometimes. So evaluations and choreography. Let's talk about that process. Are our choreographers from other Top Guns? Because I don't know. First of all, choreography is closed for parents, so I have no idea.
It's our favorite day of the year.
So when my kids get in the car, I'm like, what'd you do? Where'd you end up? Who's your choreographer? And they tell me, oh, Top Gun this, Top Gun Orlando, Top Gun Arizona. So is it because we compete against the Top Gun? So is it those coaches giving us our choreo? And if so, just so you know, us as parents, we're like, wait, so they know what we're doing.
It's actually so funny. I actually get this complaint every season about why do we share choreographers. My husband included is always like, they come to you to give you your routines? Like, that sounds stupid.
Yeah.
What I like to explain to people, one, we use choreographers from all over. So this season, all of our choreographers were from Top Gun, but in years past, we've used choreographers from Brandon, from Stingrays, a lot of big names. Their coaches not only coach their teams, but they also do choreography. What I like to explain to people is choreography is kind of like the building that you're living in. So when you are going into building a house, you have a say on what your house is going to look like, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, 1 floor, 2 floors.
Right.
And then you give your plans to a developer and they build your house. That's kind of the same thing. My coaches go to the choreographers. They're saying, okay, I want 2 standing tumbling passes. I want this running pass. I want these stunts. Our coaches come up with all of the building elements in the routine. And then after the builder builds your house, it is up to you to make your house a home. Right? You pick out the furniture, the artwork, all of the decor. You decorate and you put your bedrooms and stuff like that where you want it. And if you don't do that, you can take a house from being good to great by what you make of it. That's the same thing with the routine. So even though they give us kind of the blueprint, if we don't do anything with that blueprint, we're not going anywhere. So our coach's job is to, again, make that blueprint into something amazing.
I think it's only fair if our coaches and choreograph their routines as well.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, if any of my parents are watching or any other location parents are watching, if you're ever watching practices, the coaches change choreography
all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
So like I said, they give you kind of like the outline, but like same thing with building a house. You don't like that living room. You want to make it a big, great room instead of 2 separate rooms. You knock down a wall, you make it into 1 room. It's the exact same thing with choreography versus coaching.
Right.
I have many a times been like, okay, I like that choreography in the opening, but I'm bored with it now. I'm going to spruce it up. I'm going to change this formation. I'm going to change this pass, and I'm going to move things around to what I want instead, which when you're watching routines, most coaches do that.
Yeah.
So it's really just like a starting point, but where your routine ends up is always based off of the coaches and what they do for you.
Right. And as coaches too, sometimes you do get that routine and then we're not hitting, or hey, our kids are doing great, so let's level it up. So yeah, but still.
I will say another thing that we do, a lot of programs don't do this for choreography. You kind of get choreography in 2 separates. Sometimes choreographers go and they will do your entire routine. We actually, at Top Gun Southwest Florida, all of our coaches actually come up with all of the building elements. So all of their stunts, their pyramid, their layout, what tumbling goes in the routine, how many people go in the routine. All of that is actually done by the coaches ahead of time.
Okay.
The choreographers just come in and put it into formations and then do the transitions. So really, it's kind of them working together versus one person doing all of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I will have to say, too, a lot of those choreographers, they obviously remember the routines. Because I know my daughter has come off the mat at competition, and some of those choreographers have been like, hey, I remember when, we started with this routine and you were here in the dance and you ended up here. So, yeah, I mean, I guess we keep it in the family. But,
yeah.
But I've always wondered. All right, next question here. What's the collaboration like with Top Gun Miami and other Top Guns?
So we're actually very involved. So I actually just got a new work phone. Very exciting for me because it's an iPhone. So I'm actually part of the owner's group chat. We do one big staff training every year. We do it right after Worlds in May. Everybody comes to Top Gun Orlando, all of the locations, even UK, because they come down for Worlds and their coaches are there.
Yeah, I remember
And
the picture that you
yes.
guys that was posted last year. It was like a lot of people there.
Correct. And that was only our 5 locations. Now we're up to 7.
Okay.
So it's going to be even more insane this year. I already know. But we do anywhere between 2 and 3 days. Just depends on the year. And we do everything you can think of. We do mental health training. We do physical training. We talk about tumbling and how to get from a forward roll all the way to a double full, different drills that we can use. Same thing with stunting. We'll go through different stunting elements. And what we value as Top Gun, as a family, I believe, is we can go to another program that has maybe a really, really good level 3 team. And we're like, hey, I saw your level 3 team. I really liked how you did this in your routine. How did you get to that point? And they'll give us their tips and tricks.
Mm-hmm.
We do that throughout the year too. We just saw what our friends this past weekend, Top Gun Orlando, they have a really awesome level 1 team. And I said, how do you get your back walkovers?
Do they?
They do. And I said, how do you get your back walkovers where every single kid looks exactly the same? Because our back walkovers, they're straight, they're on time, they have pointed toes, straight legs, they're beautiful, but they don't look like one person.
Right.
And they sat there in warm-ups and gave me the 5 drills that they do at every single practice. So I'm like, oh, thanks so much.
Yeah.
And now we're going to implement. But we've done the same thing at our staff training. We all take, each location will take like a roundabout kind of topic and then give our expertise in the area. So we are constantly in communication. If anybody needs questions with score sheets or deductions or legalities and they don't know, we have a group chat. There's a band chat that all the coaches are in. We have a Facebook group that all the coaches are in, that they all kind of interact with each other when they need help.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. Okay. So walk us through a challenging judge's deduction.
My favorite, fighting score sheets?
Yes, because here's the thing. In my mind, you get your score sheets, you don't agree, and automatically I'm thinking there's some armor that you put on and your coaches are behind you and we're just walking in with a squad and, we don't want to be violent, but there's swords. Something's happening.
You know what's actually funny is they have a rule that you can only bring 2 coaches to fight a score sheet. They have that rule. So when they will talk to you, they will only talk to 2 coaches at one time. Probably for that reason.
Right.
I will say, now that I'm in this position, I am such a rock star at this now versus when I was just coaching and I had somebody else to help me. Fighting score sheets, there's 2 different things. So there's obviously the left side of the score sheet, which is difficulty. That is black and white. You follow the rule, you get the points. So those are extremely easy to fight because I basically won all of our routines in our gym meet the left side of the score sheet. So if something's not hitting that, I just go and say, hey, I'm supposed to do this. This is what I do. And they give it right back to me.
Okay.
The worst part about fighting the score sheet, which we'll talk about, I think, later on when we're talking about the 2 different score sheets, is the subjectivity of all-star cheerleading. From a very analytical standpoint, I used to be a math teacher. I am a numbers girly. And so when you are telling me that I can get a 0.6 to a 0.8 just based off of what you think, it's very hard for me to comprehend, especially because a lot of times when we see it is when you have a good performance, whether the technique was great or not, but the performance was there, you score a little higher.
Right.
Which is why, if you, again, are part of our program, we make sure to cheer no matter what.
Yeah.
Because it always helps. The biggest thing they tell you is that you can't fight technique. So that right side, that subjective side, you're not allowed to fight. It's supposed to be the judge's discretion. Now, what I do, and hopefully this doesn't get me in trouble, because it might, is I basically just go and say, hey, can I get clarification on this standing tumbling technique? I thought it was great, but you took off 0.6, and I just don't agree. So can you just tell me what I can do better so I don't mess that up?
Do they get nervous?
No, what happens is they'll either do one, they'll pull out the video and they'll say here, and here.
They point out the kids.
And they'll point out the kids that do it wrong.
Oh, no.
Which is even better for me because then I go to the coaches and you can tell this kid, and this kid, and this kid that they did it wrong. Or number 2, they'll look at it and be like, you know what, you're right. I think it should be a 0.4. That does not happen very often. Because even if they agree with me, they won't change what the judges think. But it also is helpful because even if they won't change it, if I do it on day 1, on day 2, it's in their minds.
Yeah, you'll get the
to be like, maybe watch that tumbling technique this time.
Okay.
But I will say, even though sometimes with the score sheets and fighting them, a lot of times, like I said, if I get 0.6 off on tumbling technique and I'm like, I don't agree with that, when I get those results later and the other team got 0.8 or 1 point off a tumbling technique, I'm like, okay, that makes me feel better because comparatively we're better than them.
Right.
Or vice versa. They were better than us. So at least the comparison is correct. But I think that goes back into the score sheets with telling parents the numbers, because we go to one competition, score a 93. We go to another competition, do even better, get grand champs, scored a 91.
Right.
But comparative, we beat everybody else.
Yeah, it all depends who shows up that day.
It just depends on what judges are there and if they want to take off for this or how they're feeling. It's really great for us, let me tell you. Especially when you have to explain to parents why scores come out the way they do when you can't really explain yourself.
It's me. I'm the problem. Okay, so speaking of parents, how do you deal with parents who are upset about a decision you've made?
This was my favorite question on the list, by the way. Especially because this year is our biggest year, so I have the most amount of parents, and I feel like I'm talking to parents more ever this season.
And I want to give a quick example.
Okay.
Because you and I had a conversation a few weeks ago about my own daughter being moved. Which, granted, she shouldn't have been where she was, and we both agreed that her jumps aren't the best. I mean, it is what it is. But then also she got moved because of, a stunt, or because, the back walkover or the tumbling. And again, as a coach, I see the point of view because, and sometimes it's not about your technique. I mean, it was for her because her jumps are not where they need to be, but sometimes it's because we've moved this base over here to this stunt, and now we don't want her, running over to the mat or whatnot. So tell us how you deal with that.
So I have a lot of different answers to this because obviously the answer changed from coach to director. When I was coaching, I started coaching in 2010. Parents never asked questions for the first 5 years of my career because coaches just trusted you to do your best. They might have been upset about it. They might not have been happy. They might have complained about it off the scenes, but they never really came to you because they trusted you to do your job. Unfortunately, I do think sometimes nowadays we want answers for every decision that's being made. And so it's different. So when I was coaching, if a parent had an issue, like a concern about something, I would just be honest.
Right.
I would say exactly what you said. I would say it was this technique, or it was because I had to move this group over here. So because of the paths, I had to move it around. As a director, I think with parent complaints in general, routine-wise, gym-wise, classes-wise, whatever it is, when I first took on this role...
Oh, God, I didn't even think about the classes.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one. Let me tell you, I just answered 3 emails this morning about that specific topic. When I first took on this role 3 years ago, I'm the oldest. I am just naturally type A. I am very much a people pleaser. So my first year was a very big learning year for me because every single thing that got brought to my attention, it was in number 1 red alert emergency. I had to handle it right then and there. I had to make sure every single person was happy. And unfortunately, that kind of bit me in the butt throughout the year because some people got put on teams that they shouldn't have, or they went somewhere that they shouldn't have. And sometimes, there were problems that I gave too much credit to where I shouldn't have. I should have kind of had boundaries. I didn't have boundaries. This year, especially with last year and then coming into this season, I have created those boundaries, and I have just kind of learned you can't make everybody happy.
Nope.
But also, just being a mom, I do put myself in everybody's shoes when I get a complaint. Because in my head, I said, if this was my kid, would I complain? That's my number 1 question. And then number 2, I try to think about it reasonably and rationally. And my biggest thing I will just keep going back to is I can't make everybody happy. So with classes, a big complaint was not having enough classes for every single kid. And I'm like, look, I can't make everybody happy because I don't have the space. So I do my best. I try to make sure I'm as fair as possible.
Right.
With issues with the routine thing, I know I've told you, I've told a few others, like when the coaches came to me, they asked about this technique. I said, move it around, make it work. I also say, talk to the coaches first.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I trust my staff to do the best for their teams. And right now, every single one of my teams is getting better.
Yeah.
It's in our program. Every single one of them is scoring higher. Every single one of them is getting more consistent with zeros. Now, if that wasn't the case, then maybe I would reevaluate. But at this time, all of our teams are going in the right direction. So I trust my coaches. So when it's like routine things, I'm like, talk to your coaches first.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, trust them that they're doing the best for the team. Even though it might sting, it hurts our ego. And sometimes that plays a big role with parents because it hurts your ego because my kid, my baby, they lost this.
Mm-hmm.
We're not thinking about the whole thing, where the coaches aren't thinking about this one particular kid's feelings. They're thinking about the entire team.
Of course, yeah.
So
and
that
I
plays a role.
remember, when my daughter came home and she told me, and I, we had a long talk, and it's hard because she's 10, but we had the long talk of, hey, we're not putting in the work and this is what it is. And because she's seen me as a coach too, she understands that it's got to be whatever's best for the team.
Right.
And I told her, at the end of the day, when you're standing up there with your team winning, that's...
Does it matter that you were in this spot or this spot?
No,
it doesn't.
It doesn't. I think we're all about the winning over here. So put her wherever you need to, as long as we win. So how do you balance that whole work and life and gym? Because as a coach, I feel sometimes when we're in the middle of the season like you are right now, I can't turn it off. I'm at work and I'm thinking when I get to cheer, or a parent has a question, or I need to answer this, or I need what is the budget, and did we register, and what's going on with this? How do you balance that?
Me and my husband have very different answers to this question. This helps. I have a personal phone and a work phone.
Right.
That definitely helps. I do know, because right now I'm at the gym on Mondays and Thursday nights, and Tuesday and Wednesdays are my nights home. However, tonight's a Wednesday night. I know this will be coming out on a different day, but on the way here, I answered 3 work calls. Boundaries goes back to those boundaries.
Right.
My husband and I have had many conversations about the work and home life balance, especially because, again, my first year in this role, I was not very communicative, and I just wanted the best for the program. I was in this new role. I was like, I'm going to take it. I'm going to run with it. I'm going to do the best job I can. So I put everything I had into the gym. Wasn't so great for my home,
Right.
because I neglected, and I kind of put that on the back burner, and I realized that. So in the last few years, I've definitely made a priority where I'll even, if we go on vacation, I'll send a message to the coaches. I even sent a message to the parents. Buckley is on vacation.
Yeah.
Do not contact me unless it is a life or death emergency. Because at the end of the day, I'm not a doctor. I'm not saving lives. I'm running a competitive cheerleading program. I should have the ability to have time to myself. Now, was I still constantly checking my emails to make sure that there were no fires?
Yes.
I might not be replying to them, but I'm reading them.
Right.
Am I not checking my phone to see what's going on? Of course I am. But now I have a little bit more willpower. I just won't answer them until I'm on the clock.
Yeah.
But then at least I'm checking, so if there is an actual emergency, I can handle it right away. So I'm still working on it.
Yeah. And
I'm
it's
still working
difficult.
on it.
Yeah.
Definitely. It also helps both my kids obviously cheer, so they're at the gym with me one night a week, so that helps. And then I just, again, I try those boundaries as much as possible, but it's definitely still a work in progress.
Yeah. And I feel a lot of, working full-time moms, and, you're like the CEO of Top Gun Southwest Florida.
Basically.
So that's, we get it. That's super difficult. All right. Next question is, tell us. Oh, and I love this rule, by the way.
Oh, this is my favorite. I was waiting for this question.
I love this rule because now I even tell my cheer parents. So tell us about your 24-hour rule, which whenever I get, I have a question, and why this, as a parent, I'm like, oh, wait, I got to wait 24 hours.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know, the 24-hour rule is a rule that I came up with 2 years ago. And it is basically, if a parent or guardian wants to talk to a coach or to me about an issue that's happening at the gym, unless, again, life or death emergency, but about maybe a spot being moved or about a coach being mean to their kid or whatever the case may be, they have to wait 24 hours to do anything. The biggest thing I like to communicate at the beginning of the season, this is not to deter parents from complaining or to come to me or anything like that. Absolutely not. It's actually the opposite effect. I actually want them to come to me with concerns or come to the coaches with concerns. The reason I want them to wait 24 hours is because when you are angry and your emotions are heightened, most people, including myself, you don't have the ability to comprehend reason and logic. And so even if you came to the coach or to myself with an issue when you are angry, when it first happens, even if I am logically explaining to you an answer that you would be acceptable with, you're no longer hearing me because you're angry.
Yeah, you see red.
Trust me. And the reason I came up with this, I'm going to tell you why, because it's the funniest story. My son, Lincoln, he was 2 in daycare, and he came home, and in 5 days span, he had been bit 3 times. So I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So by the 3rd time, when the teacher called me to tell me he had been bit again, I lost my mind. And I basically said, what are your teachers doing? They're not watching the kids. This is the 3rd time my kid's been bit. He's going to start biting. Don't complain to me when he starts biting. And I flew off the handle.
Yeah.
The next day, I realized that was wrong. And then I obviously not there all day with the 2-year-olds. And so when I went to pick up Lincoln from school and the teacher was like, he didn't get bit today. We really tried to make sure, because obviously she felt bad because I yelled at her.
Right.
I said, I apologized. I said, I am sorry. I did not mean to do that. And in my 10-second apology, the teacher is still watching the class, but listening to me. Over in this corner, a 2-year-old bites another kid in half of a second.
Right.
And I was like, I get it. I'm even more sorry now. And so that's where the 24-hour rule came, because if I would have just taken a beat and relaxed, I would have still complained because he had been bit 3 times, but I would have went in more rational and been like, hey, is there something that we can do? Is there something that Lincoln can do where I can work with him at home so that he's not getting bit? I would have come in more understanding and a little bit more open for a solution versus than me just wanting to yell, because that's what I wanted at that time, because I was so angry and my emotions were high and I just wanted to yell.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, anytime we get a parent that doesn't follow the 24-hour rule, it doesn't matter what I do, what I say to them in that moment. They don't remember it later. They just want to yell. And 99% of the times that the parents don't follow the 24-hour rule, within 24 hours, I get an apology.
Oh.
99% of the time that parents come in, if they come into the front and they're mad and they're yelling, or if I get an email an hour after practice that is not the nicest email, 90% of the time the next day I will get an apology.
Wow.
And they still have the issue, and I still address the issue, but they're more open to me addressing the issue, and they apologize for their tone or apologize how they came off. And that's why we have the rule.
I love the rule.
I love the rule too. It's my
love
favorite.
it.
And again,
I have to remind myself sometimes of the rule.
Well, I have to remind the coaches too, because sometimes they'll get texts and they'll send me a message and I'm like, don't answer it until tomorrow. Don't answer it. Just wait to answer it. Because if you answer right now, they're going to go again. Just wait to answer it till tomorrow, because then when you answer tomorrow, they'll be calm and they'll actually read what you write.
Yeah, I feel like as a coach too, waiting. Just wait to answer. Okay, let's go to the next question. So, I like this question.
Now I'm nervous. I don't remember which one's next.
What? And let me tell you why I asked this question. So, of course, both my kids are athletes at your gym. And I said to them one day driving, what should I ask Coach Buckley? And I found out, obviously we know you give the
good luck
teams
high fives,
the pep talks and the high fives before they take them at every competition. But so my oldest said that last year on her team, you would tell them that they were your favorites. Shout out to Pistols.
Pistols, poof, magic.
So I asked the youngest, who was sitting right next to her, and she was like, she didn't tell us that. Shout out to the Pellets from last year.
Pellets were also amazing.
So what do the pep talks entail? Are they specific ones for certain teams? Does it depend? Like, I'm sure for worlds, are we like, do you write them down and memorize them?
No.
Are they all the same?
So, okay, this is actually very complex. All my questions are complex. I like to answer a lot. The one thing I miss from coaching is so funny because when I used to coach and they would circle up and I'm like, I'll talk to you a comp. Mm-hmm. I would never talk to my teams when they went full out of practice, ever. Because I was like, I never jumped up and down in practice. I would like watch with a critical eye. I would like take mental notes so I could actually just coach. Mm-hmm. And then competitions were my times where I could hype up. I could be excited. I could jump up and down. So I still use that opportunity now. The biggest thing with teams is they hear from their coaches all day, every day. So having, I think, me come in because I know that they listen when I come.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference, which is where I came up with Coach Buckley Good Luck High Fives.
Right.
I always make sure to include all of the, a couple of the same things. I always tell them to make sure they count. Any younger team, I'm always like, the most important thing we do is count. Mm-hmm. All the younger teams, youth and below, they always get told they have to count.
Right.
Always. I always tell them to perform. I always tell them to have fun. I do change what I say based off of what the team has been doing, based off of what the team has been experiencing, and based off of the kids on the team. So last year with Pistols, in particular, I did love them. I did. I did tell a few teams that were my favorite. When people say they don't have favorites, they're lying.
I just had a whole episode on that yesterday.
Oh, did you say that they were lying?
No, I said that as a coach, I'm usually now, when you move kids around or whatever, I'm like, we're not picking favorites. Okay. It's for the team.
Okay, so I agree with that. You can have favorites, but not play favorites.
Right.
Because there are kids that are just coachable. Like, and they're funny, they're charismatic, you like them. I had favorites. I never played favorites.
Right.
I am very fair. I always am fair to every single team. So I have a couple teams that, like, they're my most enjoyable to watch, but I still give my all to my pep talks to every team. So it doesn't really matter. But with Pistols last year, they started not so great. They weren't very bonded. A lot of them were upset about placement. A lot of them were just not happy with where they were at because a lot came from like junior 2 and then they got put on youth 2 and they were like, what the heck? Mm-hmm. And they were not happy. So a lot of with my pep talks with them was kind of more just hyping them up like a mom. Like, you guys are my favorite. You guys are going to rock it. You guys are so amazing, because I wanted them to feel valued being on that team.
Right.
Whereas like pellets, I was like, look, you guys are good, you know this, but you have to be great. So what do we have to do? And with pellets, they're a little different. They're mini 1. Mm-hmm. They're younger. They need the technical stuff. They already think they're amazing because they're a pellet. They already think they're amazing.
The pellets.
They are the pellets. So when I talk to them, I'm like, no, what do we have to focus on? We need to make sure we're pointing our toes, make sure that we're doing those motions, make sure we remember what our coaches are saying. When we get to the pyramid, we have to do what? They're like, count. I'm like, count out loud. Right. Yes. Mm-hmm. So reminding them of technical things. When a team has been struggling at practice, when they're falling, a lot of the times with the older kids, they get a lot more complacent, the junior and senior teams. So a lot of times I like to include kind of, remember that whatever you guys put out there is whatever you get. Like, you don't get to redo, because a lot of times with our older kids, they just kind of go out and they just go with the motions. They're not always trying 110%. So I try to remind them of that. Try to remind them, like, nothing in your routine is easy. Even if it's a motion, hit it as hard as you can. I don't care. You've been cheering for 10 years.
Right.
Like, you have to make sure you try for every single thing. So I do gear it towards the teams. And I definitely, like, when a team has been through a lot, I'll bring that up. And I'll use that as fuel for them. But it definitely depends on the team.
So let's talk score sheets. And I don't know much about this because, of course, my teams are super small and we go to compared to Top Gun, we go to a little national competition and state competition. And I don't even know if this is true. So when we go to ECC for competitions,
we use the United score sheet.
So United score sheets. But then we have that first comp that we always go to and we never scored too. Awesome. And we're told that that's a different score sheet.
That is the varsity score sheet. The USASF score sheet, varsity score sheet, whatever you want to call it. They call it, I'm sorry, that one's called United. ECC is the open.
And do we want to get to the other score sheet instead of the ECC one?
I love this. I think that you're asking this for all the parents because they're like, why are we going to UFCG?
No, legit.
Yes, I know you're asking for the parents. It's fine. I'm here. I'm too honest. This is why I knew doing the podcast. I'm like, I'm too honest. I'll tell you everything you want to know. So basically, not excluding this year, every other year there's been 2 score sheets. We have the Open, which is what East Coast is. That's what All Star Worlds is. The Open Championship Series is the Open Championship score sheet. They are the main competitors for Varsity and Summit.
Okay.
So Varsity has their own score sheet. And the biggest reason that they have become so big, and we have been going to them for the last 3-4 years, is because of some of the things that Varsity has been doing. Right? If anybody's on Crazy Cheer Moms or USGA, like, you guys can make your own opinions on the 2 different types of events.
Right.
We have steered away from Varsity at our location. So we are focusing on the Open. Up until this year, the score sheets have been basically the same. Some of the requirements were a little bit different, but like last year, we made sure we hit both score sheets. So it didn't matter. This year, because again, they are competitors and All-Star Cheerleading is a business.
Right.
And instead, they are trying to basically take each other's businesses. The score sheets are now very different. Whereas the building and the age grade are a little bit different. Now, I will say UFCG, we had our own little score sheet where we were the best of both worlds. And I'm going to be honest, we scored where we should have scored and we placed exactly where we should have placed. It was just our first competition of the season, where every other gym that went there, that was their second competition of the season.
Okay.
So they had a little bit more experience. They had a little bit more consistency under their belt. And unfortunately, we weren't there yet, which we can see because a lot of those teams that we didn't win against in December, we're winning against now.
Right.
So
one of them we haven't seen again, and I hope, I don't want to be mean.
Okay, we're not going to say names.
I hope we don't see them again.
Oh. Red and blue?
No, I think they were white and pink. I think.
They got first place in AK's division?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're doing varsity. They're going to Summit. So we're good. So we won't. But the other ones we've seen, I think we're going to be fine. Anyways, regardless of that, the reason we use UFCG is United Florida Cheer Gyms. Mm-hmm. So we all come together and we put it on so that we can see how we compare to each other.
Okay.
So it's not like an all out or whatever. It's actual like UFCG. And my point of competing in December always is to just make sure my routines are done and we can get a score sheet. So even though, and this is the biggest thing, because even my coaches are like, this isn't the regular score sheet, and they get frustrated with me. But the differences on the 2 score sheets is the left side. That's the difference, is the difficulty. The amount of stunts you have to do, the amount of people who have to tumble, and what skills you have to do.
Okay.
Those are the differences on the score sheet. What is the same on the score sheet is the right side. The technique, how they take off points for technique, and the comments.
Okay.
So in my head, I'm going to a competition in December to, 1, make sure our routines are ready before we go on winter break. Because if we don't compete in December, our routines would not be ready. Right? They wouldn't be competition ready, and then we come back in January and we're scrambling.
I've started to call it the out of town showcase.
Correct. Basically, that's basically what it is. So that's number 1. And number 2, it's to get a score sheet on how the overall routine is. Is our technique and our stunts really lacking? Is it in our tumbling? Is it not scoring well? Is the formations, the innovation, the creativeness, are those things going to score well? And it doesn't matter which score sheet you're on because they both have those as subjective categories.
Okay.
So even though the difficulty side might have been a little bit different by a 10th here, a 10th there, the right side of the score sheet was the same. So the information that is subjective from comp to comp, because again, the left side for the Open, what we've been going to East Coast, all of those, that we know we hit because we have to. It's all black and white. We know we have that. What we don't know is the right. How is our the innovation? How are the formations? How are the spacings? How are those things going to be scoring? And so that competition, even though the difficulty side was different, the other side was not. So we were getting feedback on that side while also seeing the best of the best gyms in Florida and seeing how we rank up.
Yeah, those were some really good teams.
Correct. And that's why we do that competition, is because that's how we can kind of evaluate where our teams compare to the best of the best.
Okay.
Because sometimes when we go to some of the other events we go to, we might see one of them, but the other gyms, they might be good, but they might not be. So it's an opportunity for us to see what our real competition looks like.
Okay.
Now, I will say I voted to have it in March so that it would be a little bit more comparable. But because of the dates and all of the competitions, the only one that worked was December. So,
Wow. Yeah, that's it's hard to watch sometimes during that competition just because
yeah.
I don't know. Everybody's super prepared, it seems.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we are. What is your highest high and your lowest low of managing a cheer gym the size of Top Gun Southwest Florida?
Okay, I love it. Well, first of all, our size is about a little bit more than 300 kids at this point, which is great because when I took over this role in May of 2021, we were at 130.
Wow.
So for me, I am personally proud of our growth, our accomplishments, especially because we were also, all of our teams, we would go to comps, we would do well, but like the fact that last year every single one of our teams got top 5 at All-Star Worlds, like I was blown away. I was extremely happy. And it showed me that we were going in the right direction. So number one, the high, I think, is seeing what can happen in our area. Because I think the longest time we were like, oh, it's our area. We don't have that many kids. It's too many. Like, we don't have the right clientele. Where you go to Tampa, you go to Orlando, you go to Miami or the East Coast, and there's 17 gyms because there's so many kids that want to cheer. In our area, we don't have that. So the fact that we've already grown to this much, one, I think is great. The other thing is I think it just puts us on their map. And I like having kids in the door. And I think that having an area for kids to go other than basically getting in trouble,
right,
I think is super, super important. The low is now that we have 300 plus kids, we also have 300 plus sets of parents.
I knew that was going to be the answer.
So I will tell you, and again, sometimes the issues are very, very, very minor. Like, my kid didn't make it into tumbling class this week. Like, why not? And yell at me for my tumbling class schedule. And other times they might be bigger. But because we have so many kids, I am constantly putting out fires, whether they're very, very, very like little candlelight fires or like huge, massive, fireplace fires.
Yeah.
That would probably be the low because it's like, I feel like I'm doing fires every single day. So a little, taxing on your mental health eventually needs a couple days off. But for the most part, again, nobody's ever out of line. Nobody's ever rude. It's always just kind of coming from places of concern.
Right.
But when you're constantly answering questions, it just takes a lot.
Yeah, it gets to be a lot for sure.
It gets to be a lot.
So, we're going to talk about something a little more serious here. So, Callie Walter was an athlete at our gym who unfortunately passed away 2 years ago. And from being a parent at the gym, I know her mom asked you to not forget her and keep her memory alive. So you all came up with the Callie Walters Award that you present to an athlete at the end of the season at your banquet. So what is it? What does that all entail when you want to pick that athlete? What are we looking for?
Yeah. So Callie was, we're going to not cry in a podcast.
We're going to not cry.
We're not going to cry because I already cry at the banquet every when I do it. But Callie, her first year cheering at the gym was actually on my last year coaching. I coached with Coach John, senior co-ed 3. She had come from gymnastics, wanted to try cheer. Her tumbling was beautiful, but had never cheered a day in her life. So naturally, she got in trouble a lot. Right. Because she didn't know how to stunt. She didn't know how to jump. She didn't know how to do an actual routine cheer-wise. But she was the kid that was just okay. And just, she always rolled with the punches. She never took things personally. She knew that we were trying to make her better. And she was like one of those kids that we always called coachable, right? We wanted to be around her. If I needed to pick somebody to be a double teamer or somebody to be on my team, she would be somebody I would choose because of her work ethic, because of her attitude, because she was just very kind-hearted and natured. The next season, she took a little bit of a break and then wanted to come back. We had a spot for her. Her mom basically said how much she missed the gym. She loved it so much. And then unfortunately, yes, she passed away. I remember calling her mom the morning of, and I just basically bawled to her and just told her that we were here for anything she needed. And she expressed to me again how much she loved the gym and that she never wanted her to be forgotten because, and again, you have children, I have children. It's unfathomable to lose them at such a young age. So when we had our memorial, I came up with the idea for the Cali Award, and that was kind of my way of making sure that we always remembered. And so, in my regard, because I am the one who chooses it, I let the coaches kind of give me some recommendations. We kind of all talk about it, but ultimately, I do decide who receives the award. I think we're looking for somebody who has a positive attitude, always tries, no matter how tired they are, no matter how hard they are. If a coach asks them to do something, even if that coach just finished yelling at them, but then they ask them to do something, they're like, yes, coach, I got it. And so it's somebody who's extremely coachable, extremely kind. It would be somebody that if I asked any kid in the gym, like, hey, do you want them on your team? They'd be like, absolutely, like, give her to me or give him to me.
Okay.
They're just amazing, kind of a soul to be around. So I think all of that kind of contributes into the Kelly Award and who we would award it to.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I know that.
It also went to her daughter.
Yeah. It did. And by the way, somebody should tell the parent, because I cried like a baby. And when you were talking about it, because another mom who knew.
She knew? I didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, but she kind of knew. Because
okay, because I didn't tell anybody.
They must have told her to record. And so, her daughter coaches. So, and she didn't say anything, but they told her to record. And I remember standing next to my husband at the banquet while you were talking about this athlete. And you were like, everybody wants her on the team. And when you ask coach, who do you want on the team? Yeah, we want her. And I turned to Phil and I was like, who is this? They're amazing. Who is this person? And I always feel like, and this is just my perspective on it, I always feel like it needs to go, or it should go to one of the older athletes. So here's my daughter, she's 12. And I'm like, I turned around to Phil, literally hit him on the shoulder, and I was like, who's that? That's awesome. And then when you called Mia, I was like, oh my God. And then, of course, I cried for like days and days and days. I don't know why. I cried for days.
You know what's funny is like, she was obviously one of the suggested names, and like hands down won the vote in a landslide. Like every coach was like, yes. Wasn't even a question.
They told me after.
Yeah.
They kept saying, well, we, of course, a list of athletes, right? But everybody kept bringing up Mia. Everybody kept bringing up Mia. And I'm like, are you sure? Because she rolls her eyes at me quite a bit at home. Are you sure?
And again, I want to go ahead and preface, teenage girls roll their eyes.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I know that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not worried about that because that happens. But we're more talking about in the grand scheme of the thing, the overall scheme of things. Trust me, I've coached Mia, and she never once rolled her eyes at me.
She did not. In fact, I don't even think, funny story, I don't even know if you remember. So back in the day, we used to sit inside the gym.
Back in the day.
So we're talking 2019.
Mm-hmm.
You coached.
That was my junior 2 year, yeah.
Yeah, you coached snipers.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Mia was 9, and really her role
was pregnant with Blakely.
Yeah, her role was to tumble. And
we only had a junior 2. So every kid that was level 2 was on junior 2. So we had 8 to 15.
Yeah.
It was fun.
It was like 30 children. And so I remember one of the times we were at practice and she was going through her pass, and you told her, okay, Mia, go through your pass. And she landed on her shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately was like, wait, what? Is she okay? And you asked her, like, Mia, you okay? And she just looked down and was like, yep, I'm fine. And she wouldn't even look. I'm like, and I told her after that, I'm like, Mia, you got to look at coach and let her know if you're okay, because you stopped her and you were like, no, are you okay?
So I did my job.
Yeah. And she was like, no, I don't know what's happening. So, but yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah. She never forgets that. Okay. So we just talked about this before we came up. So mental blocks. What are your thoughts on mental blocks?
Okay. So mental blocks for me, kids get them. In my experience, I do want to preface this with, I do not have a lot of mental health training. I have some. I know to help encourage kids, to coach kids, but like on the mental health side of that, I would say I wouldn't have any actual, what's the word I'm looking for? Like like actual training, right? Like I didn't have like a psychiatrist teach me how to deal with these mental blocks, right?
Right.
Now, in my experience, a lot of the times the mental blocks come from athletes that feel an exceedingly amount of pressure. And from experienced kids on my teams that get a mental block or receive them is because they feel the pressure or because they've had a fall and they feel like they're going to have a fall again.
Yeah.
So they're either pressured and they have fear that they're not going to be able to live up to the expectation, or they have a fear that they're going to fall again.
Or sometimes it's both.
Or sometimes it's both, right? So in my experience, because I know myself and I am not as good with talking the kids through it, with trying to help them kind of overcome that by visualizing and doing different techniques, I do two things. One, I always encourage the parents and the kid, just take a break. Don't try to do it. Let's take a week off.
Oh, I do the opposite. I mean, not as a coach, but as a mom.
And I will say in my experience, the more the parent is like, no, you got to just do it. Let's go do another private. You can do it. The more pressure they feel.
Yeah.
And so in my experience, it doesn't help. So I normally tell them to do one of two things. Number one, take a break. Take a week off. Just relax. It's not the end of the world. We can figure something else out. If you can't get it this year, that's fine. We'll get to it. No big deal. My number two is I recommend them to somebody who I know is good with them. So we have a few coaches in our gym that are just hands down, like they take a kid who has a mental block and then they're tumbling within a week. It's amazing. And we have a few of them in our gym that are very good with that. They're very patient. They have a lot of techniques. They have a lot of tips. And so I recommend.
Right.
And so I think that's probably my best advice is one, take a breather. Just try to release some of that pressure that they feel. Because sometimes, like you said, it's a fear. So sometimes there's a way of getting over a fear, but then sometimes it's just pressure.
Right.
So if it's pressure, let's take the pressure off. Everybody take a step back. It's totally fine. We're good.
Okay.
And some kids are different. Sometimes you need to be hard on them. It's every kid has different cases. So then I recommend them to people who are better.
Yeah.
Than I.
I have to say as well, I think also the fear of just having a mental block, period. Because not too long ago, Mia was at practice, fell. She pretty much fails out on her tuck. Yeah. And so she fell. She was okay, when we were there. I remember you were there that night, and I was like, Buckley, where's my kid? Because I think
she was fine,
yeah, she went to go get water and whatnot. Yeah. And as soon as practice was over, because they had her sit out, and she did land on her head and neck and all the things. so of course they had her sit, have a seat. The first thing she said was, I got to get up and do it. I got to get up and do it. And I was like, no. Because, of course, as a mom, I panicked. And I said, no, you got to wait. And she was like, no, I could do it. I want to do it.
Well, and sometimes they need that. Yeah. And I think every kid is different, which is why, like, again, I have certain coaches that are great, and they'll figure out which thing they need, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I think every kid's different, but there's always different tips and tricks.
Yeah. I mean, I have some mental health training, and I still wouldn't know what to tell these kids. That's difficult.
Right. And I mean, I feel like you're a little old school like me, where I'm just like, just suck it up, buttercup, you got it.
100%.
And I know that that's not right. No. So I'm like, why don't we go talk to somebody else who's not going to tell you to suck it up, buttercup? Because that's sometimes my mentality.
Just go do it.
Just go do it. It's going to be fine.
How do you deal with teams who aren't bonding? And I had this on another podcast that I did recently, because to me, as a coach and as a mom, I want to plan all the things. Like, let's get together and do a team bonding. Let's go bowling, or let's do, an escape room. But as a coach, I think team bonding starts when we're at practice. And the hard work and the ups and downs. And that's really when we begin to trust each other as a team and work through things. And then later we can have those fun things. Yep. So what are your thoughts on that?
So my big thoughts about teams, especially, I feel like you see this a lot in the All-Star community, just because youth teams are 6 to 12, and then junior teams are 8 to 15. Senior teams are 12 to 19. The age ranges are so big, and you always do have an age range because Flyers are usually younger. Phases are normally older. It's really funny because what normally happens when I see a team is not bonded, it's when they're losing. Yeah. That's when we see it, right? All summer, they're totally fine. All fall, they're totally fine. When they get to competition, if they're winning, they're golden. They love each other. But if they get to competition and they lose, the Flyers are too young. They're too much of a baby. The bases are being too mean to my kid, and so they can't do their job. it's a lot of pointing the blame and the blame game because it can never be somebody's fault.
Right.
When a team is more bonded, they'll take the responsibility as a team. But when the team is not bonded and they lose, they point fingers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's normally when it comes out. So, and that's what I usually tell the coaches. So a lot of the time, I tell the coaches, like, let's try to aim for success. I know we've done a lot of different things as coaches where we'll do like the big sister, little sister on a team. You're responsible for her. You're making sure she's doing her job. You're always her cheerleader, like help them out. And the little for the big, same thing. A lot of times the coaches will do stunt group challenges where they do maybe like on a level 1 team, like let's see who can hold the half the longest, because then they're working together as a stunt group, which makes the stunt group bond.
Right.
And that's usually where you want to see it, because those are the ones who have to work together throughout the routines. So I try to tell them, like, play games, do contests, do conditioning as a stunt group. And we do that starting in the summer. A lot of our teams will do that. They'll do like panel race, pushing, but they'll keep them in groups with their stunt groups. So you're always working with your stunt group. So you're bonding with them instead of going with your friends. I know a lot of times the coaches will reach out to the parents and be like, hey, let's set this up so we can get it going. And I think that's usually what it is, because again, normally it's fine until something happens and you're not winning.
Yeah.
And then they start pointing blame. So then we're like, okay, what do we need to do? But starting at the beginning of the season to bond, especially when the ages are different, I think always doing like stunt group challenges, stuff like that, doing a big and little is always helpful.
I think the stunt camp really helps.
Stunt camp really helps because they're all together. And then sometimes the kids have been together for a really long time, so it happens naturally. And sometimes it's a brand new group of kids, and you have to set up that team bonding early. So it just depends.
Okay. So tell me about a short-term goal that you have for the gym and a long-term goal.
Great. And we're going to do the next question because it's like the 5 years too.
Yeah.
So we're just going to put them together because I know
the last question is, where do you see
the gym,
Top Gun 5 years?
So short-term goal, All-Star Worlds. Last year I wanted top 5. We did it.
Yeah, you did.
And all I say is when I go to All-Star Worlds, I always say I have like 5 goals. Number 1 is to hit 0. Then it's make finals. Then it's hit 0 again. Then it's top 5. Then it's top 3.
Okay.
So my ultimate short-term goal is I really want top 3 with every team. We obviously have more teams this year, a little bit harder to do, especially All-Star Worlds is blowing up. There's going to be even more teams this year. So I know that the feed is a little bit more difficult, but ultimately I would love every elite team to get top 3.
Okay.
So I would say reasonable. I think it's reasonable to say that all teams should make it up on that stage as long as they do their jobs and they're hitting 0 both days. If they don't hit 0s, I can't do anything for them.
I know.
You know?
Yeah. You can only do what you can do.
I can only do what I can do. But our goal, I think, for short term is for that. My other short term goal, and I do this going into every single season, is 80% retention. So from the kids that are cheering this year into going to next year, excluding seniors, kids who age out, my goal is always to do 80% retention, to keep 80% of the kids in the gym. So that would be another short-term goal. Last year I got 82. I was very happy. The year before that I only had 73, so I was not as happy. So main goal is to, again, 80% retention. I think long-term goal, there's 2 of them. 1, being a new gym, and like a new gym. Not like just another rental, but like actually being a good facility with an extra couple set of floors. Hopefully having a parent viewing inside, maybe some AC.
Yeah.
I don't know. But just a newer facility, something a little bit bigger, to kind of accommodate us growing. So that would be number 1.
And we need a smoothie bar.
And a smoothie bar. My other long-term goal would be to have more higher level teams.
Okay.
So
like a world's team?
Yes. World's teams take a little bit of time. I don't think that's in 5, but I'm hoping in 10.
Okay.
Because world's teams, you can't just get 1 or 2 doubles. And it's, again, not just tumbling. It's also having world's level jumps, world's level stunting, world's level flyers, world's level bases. So it does take time to build that. It would be great to happen in 5. Realistically, my goal would have it by 10, in 10. But
I think we get that a lot, outside where we stand, the Bajor baddies.
Yeah.
We get, how come we don't have a world's team?
Well, and I can tell you one of the main reasons is that, again, to build a world's team, it's not to have 2 or 3 world's level athletes. You need to have a team of world's level athletes if we're going to make one to be competitive. Because I can make a world's level team with 3 doubles. I can do that. Doesn't mean they're going to be competitive. Doesn't mean that they're going to do well. Doesn't mean they're going to make finals. So why pay all that money? Why do all of that if it's not going to be worth it for these athletes?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So in my regard, my goal is, again, in 5 years, I want to have more upper levels, a bigger senior 5, a bigger level 4 team, maybe 2 up to 3 level 3 teams. So we have feeder programs into it so that we can develop, because those level 5 kids are learning the better stunting technique, the better tumbling technique, the better jumps technique, and to get them to stay. The hardest part with building a world's team, and it took, before when we had one, it took 10 years, it took, I think, from the start of them opening to our first world's team, I think it was 14 years.
Wow.
To get our first world's team. And we had a world's team for 3 years. And the way they did it is kids stayed. And that's they stayed. They didn't make the 2-hour drive to go to Top Gun Miami, or the 2-hour drive, 3-hour drive to go to Top Gun Orlando. Mm-hmm. And it's hard. And me as a gym director, I understand, because it's a choice. It's a choice to stay and develop a world's program with your home gym, or travel and make a established world's team.
Yeah.
So I understand the struggle. I understand the option. But what we are trying to do as the coaching staff, is what I'm trying to do, is develop a culture within Top Gun Southwest Florida that the kids want to stay here. They want to be a part of this program. They want to not leave their coaches. They want to be here so that it doesn't matter if they're level 3, 4, 5, or 6. They want to just be here in our environment, because the more that they want that, the more they'll stay, and the more we can actually develop the talent that is needed for a world team.
Okay. That makes sense. I think sometimes too, with the kids, and as they get older, sometimes though they feel they know best, even when it comes to the sport. Like, oh, coach told me this, but I know that it's not that. So I think sometimes that culture too of them not just take a beat and listen to what the coach is telling you, so that we could progress.
Correct.
But yeah, that's good to know, because I feel a lot of the times the parents talk about that. Like, how come we don't have a world's team? Well, how about you have your kids stay here?
And because that is the truth. This is our 3rd year of having a senior 5 after not having it for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So we had our world's team, and then we went back down to level 4. We had a level 4 team for 3 years, and then we made our level 5 team, and this is our 3rd season of level 5. And each year they're getting better. Yeah. This is the best level 5 team we've had in the 3 years that I've been in charge. So we're getting better, but every year we're losing 2 or 3. So we're continually trying to build up from when we lose. So it's just the game. You just got to play the game, and we basically play with the cards that we've been dealt.
Right, of course.
So if I can develop a team and develop them into a world team, which is my goal, I'm going to do that. But I think it starts first with the culture, with changing it, with making the kids want to develop and change here, want to be on a developing world team versus going to an established one. But they have to want that. And if they don't want it, then it's hard to coach them, just like you said.
Yeah. Okay, so we answered all the questions.
I know, I got my lightning round, I think. I'm a little scared for this.
Yep, we did. Okay, so it's called the send-off round.
Okay.
So the send-off round is just 5 questions that I've come up with, and you have no idea.
I know.
What I'm about to ask.
None.
So also, if you don't answer these, you don't hit 0. I don't know what that means. If you didn't hit 0 and you get deductions, what those deductions are, I'm not sure. And just so you know, my youngest said that you should do Burpee back handsprings if you don't answer them.
I can do them on the trampoline. I'll do them tomorrow at the gym if I get anything wrong. Okay. Can I circle back? Can I go past and come back to it?
No.
Oh, okay. How long do I have for each second? My brain works like
5 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
All right. And these could be quick answers.
Okay. Oh, they're going to be. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay, here we are. Send off round. First question. Favorite Top Gun Southwest Florida music this season?
Oh, I do know this, but why can't I think of it right off the top of my head? Bullet Babes.
Same.
Aye, Captain.
I know. Okay, so if you could coach at any Top Gun gym, which one would you go to?
Top Gun Southwest Florida.
Okay, pick another.
You didn't say that, but I would. Top Gun Orlando.
Okay. Not Arizona?
God, it's hot there.
It is.
It's super hot.
I like Arizona.
No, Orlando's gym has like 8 floors and is in the air condition.
I know. We went there last at the World.
That's why I would go there, because they have air conditioning.
They're the ones with the smoothie bar.
They have the smoothie bar, the food bar, and they have air conditioning. That's why I'd go there.
Okay, good. That's a good answer. Okay, ready.
Mm-hmm.
This is for all my parents.
Oh, God.
I know y'all have been asking. Here we are. So why is it that we didn't get the 30 years and counting in our music?
I'm going to get in trouble for this answer. I'll tell you the truth. I was in the owners group chat. They asked me if we were going to do this. I said, I can, but nobody ever told me what the final one was. And I was told that they would let me know what the final phrasing would be. And if I was having to use it, I said, okay, just let me know when and where. I was never told, got to showcase, and everybody had it except for us.
I knew it. We were left out.
I was asked, are you going to? And I said, we already have our music, but I can change it because it's the same beat. I can change it. I didn't know what it was finalized to because there was like 3 different options.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know if we were doing it. And I was told, this is what it is. I said, okay, great. Do you want me to put it in? They're like, well, hold off. I'll let you know if everybody's doing it first. I said, okay. And I didn't hear anything again until showcase and everybody had it.
Okay.
That's why.
All right. We'll take it. I mean,
little bit of miscommunication. That's all.
Yeah. What are we going to do?
Little bit of miscommunication.
Favorite cheer level to coach?
2.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Man, I thought you were going to say 5 or...
No. Senior.
Or the littles.
I started coaching my first year. I coached Youth 1 behind John. And then after that, for 4 straight seasons, I coached Senior 2. And I loved every second of it. I love level 2.
Okay.
Love it.
That's breaking news.
I love level 2.
Okay, last one.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of answered this one already.
Okay.
But now I'm going to switch it up a little.
Okay.
So, Top Gun Southwest Florida. Are we moving next year?
Next season? No. 2025 to 2026.
We're moving.
We are moving. Season 24, we will be moving. We're in season 22 right now.
Okay.
So we have one more season in our location, and we will be moving in season 24.
Okay, so we're moving. I'm excited.
Are moving in season 24.
I'm excited and a little nervous because you're not. Of course, you're never going to make everyone happy. So I'm already thinking
we won't be moving far. The area we are looking at would be an extra like 10, 15 minutes for us.
Oh, okay.
But anybody that hops on the highway, it should not be longer for you. Because instead of coming down Daniels, you'll be closer to the interstate.
Got it.
That is where we're looking right now. So no promises. But that's where we're looking right now.
Does it have air conditioning?
There are options to have air conditioning. But again, we are very preliminary stages of looking.
Well, wait. Let me rephrase that.
Also, remember, if you choose to stay with us, this one, not this one. If you choose to stay with us, if we move to a new location, your monthly tuition will be higher.
Oh, no.
Just remember. Newer place, nicer place means nicer things, means more money.
So I'm not really worried about the kids having air conditioning.
You just let it go. We are looking. Okay, so I will say, as we're looking for spaces, there are a few things that we are looking for. We want at least 1 extra floor. So at least 5 is our goal. Obviously, also a place to put equipment, a place for parents, and then a good office for me.
Yes. I'm excited.
So we are looking at all of those things being included. Obviously, beggars can't be choosers, and we'll see what we can find. But that is what the goal is.
Okay. All right. So that's it. That's the podcast. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Much. Let's make sure that we recorded everything.